Surbhi, who will list out all the stocks that will be in focus today. Surbhi?
Hi, thanks for that. I have a few stocks on my radar this morning. The first one is Tata Motors, where the board gives in-principle approval for partial divestment of company's investment in Tata Technologies via the IPO route. Next is GR Infra Projects, where the company sells entire stake in arm GR Highways Investment Manager to Lokesh Builders for 15 crores. KEC International, the company gets orders worth 1350 crores across various business segments. Godrej Agro, where it enters into 2 sale deeds for transfer of close to 4 acres of land in Tamil Nadu for 72 odd crores. And lastly, Ethos, where the promoter Yashwardhan Sabu sells 50,000 shares at an average price of 1022 per share. With this, his shareholding in the company goes down from 0.86% to 0.64%.
Okay, all right, Surbhi, thank you so much for that. And let me go across to Mangalam now, who will talk about all the cues that are coming in from the F&O space this morning. Mangalam.
Good morning. So today the cues are looking much better than what they were yesterday. And yesterday wasn't particularly bad because while the Nifty closed absolutely flat, it was a recovery of almost 150 points from the lows. So, to that extent, we are expecting a good day in today's trading session as well. In the cash markets, the FII sold about 139 odd crores, a little lower than what they did earlier, 158 odd crores. But importantly, over the last 2 trading sessions, the DII buying has been outpacing the FII selling. So that's a positive. And in index futures, yesterday, we did see that the Nifty futures premium actually rose from around 87 points to around 108 points as well. So that was telling you that there was some purchase out there as well. The data confirmed that 658 crore worth net purchase is what we saw out there. And it was basically the shorts who covered their positions because they weren't getting any follow through. As a result of which, the longs, which were at 58%, have inched closer to that 60% odd mark. The other thing that took place was also the put call ratio that we were talking about yesterday has inched higher from 0.76 to 0.9. And that's telling you that there was some put writing as well. And that is the biggest positive. 79,000 put contracts written as against just 1,000 call contracts, and more calls bought than puts as well. So the FIs are a little more bullish on the markets, and more importantly, they believe that the lower levels could see a fair amount of support. 18,400 put. The premium out there is around 35 odd rupees. So that's telling you that 18,365 odd would be an important support. 18,500 put also saw a fair amount of writing for a premium of 66 odd rupees. So 18,365 to 18,450 is the support zone you're looking at. And 18,500 call obviously is at a premium of 100 odd rupees. So 18,600 to 650 could be a bit of a resistance zone. So what does this mean for the overall market setup? Option writers see 18,350 to 18,650 as an important range for the Nifty. We're in the middle of that range. The SGX Nifty indicates a positive start. Let's see where we go. For the Nifty Bank, it's the 20-day moving average, which will act as a firm support.
It will. We'll watch out for that particular level. Mangalam, thank you so much for all those cues. Finally, Rima is back with us. Rima, what is the market setup looking like today?
As you guys have been pointing out, the top-down approach looks very good. US markets had a solid finish again of 1.5%. Asian markets higher. SGX Nifty suggesting that after the consolidatory session that we had yesterday, this morning, there could be some gains. But the general sense is it could be a bit of a wait-and-watch approach, a bit of a sideways move, because although there is a gap-up opening, a bit of a positive start, markets are finding it difficult to follow through with big moves. And plus, we've got important data to track, the US CPI inflation data. The flows have been thinning out as the year-end dynamics play out. So the FI sold 138 crore in the cash market, but look at the gross buying. The gross buying was just sub 7,000. A couple of weeks ago, that figure was even extending up to 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 crore rupees. So the gross inflows and outflows by both the FIs and DIIs have been thinning out. Also for the Indian markets, what could act as a bit of a dampener is the IIP data. October IIP came in as a big disappointment at -4%. And remember, this feeds into the GDP data. So the fear is that in the coming quarter, the GDP data, the Q3 GDP data, could pose a negative surprise, a downward surprise, and that is something the street will be, watching out for very closely. As I said, this week, especially the second half, is going to be very crucial, starting with the US CPI inflation data. So markets could have a bit of a sideways, move. There's lots happening on the primary market front as well. Landmark Scar as well as Drone Acharya Aerial Innovation. Both these two IPOs open up today. Back to you.
Okay, all right, Rima and Mangalam, Surbhi, thank you so much for joining us and prepping us up for this trading day ahead. Moving on to some news from the India-China border, Indian Army sources say that troops of the Indian and Chinese armies faced off into the Tawang region of Arunachal Pradesh on the 9th of December, leading to minor injuries to personnel on both sides. Sources also say that both sides immediately disengaged and commanders of both armies held a flag meeting to restore peace in the region. For now, we'll slip into a break. Up next, we'll put focus on the macros as IIP unexpectedly dips for October. Inflation, however, is now under the crucial 6% mark. Details after this short break. Welcome back. You're still tuned into Power Breakfast on CNBC-TV18. After 10 months, inflation has dropped below the RBI's threshold of 6%. A sharp fall in food prices, especially vegetables, took the consumer price index to 5.88% in November. Food inflation is now below 5% and vegetable prices contracted by more than 8%. Many economists now believe inflation could hit 5% in a couple of months if the current trend persists. While the fall in inflation brings much-needed cheer for the economy, the growth engines are sputtering. Industrial production in October contracted by 4% to the surprise of economists and market watchers. This is the slowest pace of growth in 26 months. Lata Venkatesh joins us with a wrap of the inflation and the IIP data as well. Lata?
On a day when the government says it will not reveal the contents of the letter that the Reserve Bank has written explaining why it could not bring inflation below 6%, the best of news hits the Reserve Bank. Inflation for the month of November is indeed below 6% after 11 long months, coming in at 5.88. But the better news, as you point out, is that it has come in way below street expectations. Street expectations were running between 6.3 and 6.4%. The biggest surprise is coming in food inflation. People were expecting food inflation at about, 5.5, 5.8%. It's come in at 4.6, and there's a steep fall in vegetable prices and, of course, edible oils, fruit, and even pulses to some extent. So this combined impact of several food items has brought down the overall inflation level. The negative in the inflation number is the core inflation. Core inflation are largely services, education, health, transport. This is not falling, and it is very difficult because these can't be imported. That, as the Reserve Bank pointed out in its previous policy, has become very sticky, coming in at 6.2 for November, way above the Reserve Bank target, of course, of 4% for overall inflation. The Reserve Bank is worried that core will remain at 6%, and that's why it sounded hawkish in the previous policy. So looks like that hawkishness will continue. But the headline inflation falling is very important, and the bond markets are bound to react very positively to this when they start trading. The negative number also comes from the index of industrial production, which is for the previous month, October, coming in at -4%. It's a serious indicator of weakness in manufacturing. Manufacturing has come in at -5.6 for October. Consumer goods, both durables and non-durables, are -13, -14%. So clearly, growth is under threat, but inflation is under control.
Yes, that's the update as far as macros in the country are concerned. Moving on, the union government has told the parliament it is not considering any proposal to bring back the old pension scheme. Tells opposition rule states who have refused to adopt the new pension scheme that it cannot return the accumulated corpus as there is no provision under current laws. Sapna Das is here with the details. Sapna, take us through the union government stance in parliament.
Well, surely the union is very much clear on the fact that, they don't really have a role to play as such on, states entering into NPS. I think there was enough clarity on that front. And here on their part, they're extremely clear that there is no question of going back, and, the reasons there are extremely obvious. There has been a massive debate on it before NPS was rolled out. In fact, that continued for a long period of time, and states themselves took a lot of time to come into the system, right from 2004 to 2010. So it's pretty much a done deal. Plus, there are massive fiscal implications. If you have some of the states going back to the OPS, there can be massive fiscal implications. And, there is an advisory all around, or there is an intent both by, by various institutions, by Reserve Bank of India, by Finance Commission, by GOI, by Finance Ministry, by various experts, that fiscal consolidation or fiscal prudence is very much required. So keeping all of that in mind doesn't really make sense, for this reversion. Of course, unless, some of those states to go back to OPS, maybe making some fiscal savings, at least in the initial years, because of the way OPS is structured. Maybe that could be one of the reasons. But overall, it's not very productive, so to speak. This is what experts and officials tell. across the board. This could also have some implications for center-state relations. There's a lot of central assistance that is taken by states. Sans that, if you look at their budgets, they don't really have too much resources to, spend in terms of capex. And there has been a lot of emphasis on capex as well in the last 2 odd years by the center and to an extent by the states as well. So all of that, becomes a bit of a question mark, so to speak, at some point in time. Also, let's be very clear that why this, why the fact that this money cannot be returned, simply because, states can enter voluntarily into NPS, but when they exit, they are not the parties. The contract is between the NPS trust and the pensioner. So even if the corpus has to be recalled by some of the states because they want to revert to OPS, that is not feasible.
Sapna, thank you so much for joining us with those important details. With that, we'll slip into a break. Up next, I'll get you all the cues from the commodities market. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're still tuned into Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18. It's time to get in Manisha Gupta, who's joining us with all the update from the commodities space. Hey, Manisha, good morning.
Morning, Sonal. Thank you for that. Well, I want to talk about the crude oil prices where we saw 10% of decline in the previous week, but overnight it has been 3% of a jump coming in for the prices. The Canada Keystone pipeline to the U.S. Gulf Coast remains shut. That carries 0.6 million barrels per day of heavy crude to the U.S. refiners. The markets are taking premium from that. In any case, markets were really short because they had built up a premium ahead of all the sanctions on Russia. But because on ground it has had very minor effect, we have seen markets yet again winding up those long positions that were created. Also, with China reopening and supply disruptions, we have seen prices getting support yet again. But it is all going to be about the U.S. inflation data today. This week, it is, monetary policies coming in from across everywhere. You have the U.S. Fed policy, the European Central Bank, and the Bank of England also meeting in for their monetary policy meetings in this week. So the markets are anticipated to be choppy.
All right. Thank you, Manisha, for joining us with all those updates from the commodity markets. Moving on, the co-founder and former CEO of bankrupt crypto trading firm FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried, was arrested in the Bahamas after the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York shared a sealed indictment with the Bahamian government. His arrest is the first concrete move by regulators to hold individuals accountable for the multi-billion-dollar implosion of FTX last month. Sam Bankman-Fried is expected to be extradited to the United States. His arrest comes the day before he had agreed to testify before the U.S. House Financial Services Committee regarding the collapse of FTX. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Power Breakfast. Do stay tuned. All the market action coming up on Bazaar Morning Call.